asked to talk about this, independent Senator of Maine, Angus King. Sir, good to have you with me. So we hear that your counterpart, Susan Collins, is one of the senators that will be meeting with Judge Garland. And as we see there, we have Kelly Ayotte, we have Jeff Flake, we also have Rob Portman, and then we have Mark Kirk. And you heard what the majority leader, Mitch McConnell, had to say, and he invoked the Biden rule. I don't think we've heard that phrase much when it comes to this issue of not going forward with any type of hearings. But how unprecedented is it to not take this seriously, to not hold hearings to vet the potential nominee?
I don't know if I've ever heard of a case where there was not even a hearing or a discussion or consideration. Nobody has to vote one way or the other, but I don't understand what these guys are worried about, or what are they afraid they're going to like the nominee? I mean, you have hearings. That's our obligation, it seems to me. The president had an obligation under the Constitution to make a nomination. We have an obligation to consider it, not necessarily to vote for it, but to at least hold hearings. Let the American people get a look at this guy. Let us all understand what his background is, what kind of judge he would make on the Supreme Court, and move forward. To call this a principle, I just don't get it. I mean, what's the principle? We don't do what we're sent here to do? The president is the president for 4 years, not 3 years and 1 month. And there's a lot of loose talk about lame duck. If the lame duck is between the election and the new president being sworn in, or the new governor or the new Congress, if this president's a lame duck now, so is 1/3 of the Senate and the entire House of Representatives. I mean, come on, let's just get on with it. As usual, my colleague Susan Collins, I think, is absolutely right, and we ought to hold hearings. To say, as some of my colleagues have, I'm not even going to meet with this person, oh man, that doesn't even pass a straight face test.
Well, it's interesting how you break down the timing and the logic used behind all of this, but I want to play for everybody what your colleague Senator Orrin Hatch said the last hour. Take a listen.
The Senate has never confirmed a nominee to the Supreme Court, to a Supreme Court vacancy, that opened up this late in a term-limited president's time in office. This is only the third vacancy in nearly a century to occur after the American people had already started voting in a presidential election.
So, Senator, that's a different tone from Hatch than the interview that he gave to Newsmax that I brought up with our Luke Russert, saying that he felt that Garland was a fine man, and then said about President Obama he probably won't nominate him because this appointment is about the election, so I'm pretty sure he'll name someone the liberal Democratic base wants. But in talking about that, Senator Bernie Sanders put out a statement about this, saying that they find Garland to be a pretty consensus nominee, that this would be something that both sides would probably eagerly want because they don't know what they're going to get out of the next president. Is that a fair concern for who comes in next?
I think it absolutely is. I think these folks are rolling the dice politically because this fellow apparently is a centrist and a consensus builder. I don't know. I don't know enough about him to characterize how he would be as a judge. But there's a chance, anyway, that if the Democrats retain the presidency and retake the Senate, which is certainly a possibility, they could end up with a much more liberal justice as a nominee. I mean, maybe a moderate in hand is better than a liberal in the bush, or a conservative in the bush that they may not get. So I don't understand the calculation. But let's get away from that. Let's just go back to the very basic question. Let's have hearings. Let's see what this person's views are, and let each senator make up their mind based upon whether they think he will be a good Supreme Court justice. That to me is the issue right now. And hair splitting about when the vacancy occurred and all that kind of thing. The Constitution is absolutely clear. 4 years is the term of the president. The president is the president right now and has that obligation to make a nomination, and I think we have an obligation to consider it. I find it a pretty straightforward proposition, and to say we're not going to have hearings, we're not even going to meet with the person, as I say, I just don't get that.
Well, we hear from Senator Mitch McConnell that the Senate has the right to withhold consent, but you make a point about the hearings. We'll see if that changes anytime soon. Senator Angus King, sir, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you.